I whispered. He promised stability, but every secret date cracked me open like glass. My voice trembled as if it had been waiting years to escape. The room spun with the weight of his lies, each one heavier than the last. I remembered how he swore he wanted honesty, how his eyes burned with vows of never hiding. Yet I tasted betrayal before I even knew its name. Love was supposed to be freedom, not this suffocating spiral of suspicion. My trust became a rope around my throat, pulling tighter each time he smiled at her. I told myself I could survive this arrangement, that I was strong enough to share. But strength is fragile when you're bleeding in silence. I wanted love that felt safe, but instead, I found myself drowning in shadows he built. Every kiss that wasn't mine felt like a knife pressed gently into my skin, waiting for the final plunge. I told myself love could bend without breaking, but his secrets bent me into someone unrecognizable. Michael said, "Trust me," with a smile too easy to fake. I clung to that promise as if it were oxygen, but every time he left, silence screamed louder than his words. My chest ached with questions I never asked, afraid of answers I couldn't bear. I thought I was strong enough for polyamory, strong enough to share him without losing myself. But the truth is, I wanted to be chosen, not tolerated. Love turned into a negotiation where my heart was the only currency. And while I pretended calm, every corner of my soul cracked under the weight of doubt. I remember the night Emily entered our lives. Michael called her just a friend, but I knew from the way he said her name that she was more. I laughed, pretending it didn't sting, but inside I burned. I became both participant and spectator, watching my own love story unravel. Emily's laugh echoed in my head long after she left the room, a melody that replaced mine. I told myself boundaries would save me, that rules would be my shield. But rules are paper when the fire is desire. I thought sharing meant honesty, but honesty never came. Instead, I got fragments of truth, torn and half burned. Michael said, "We'll set boundaries," but his words dissolved the moment her hand brushed his. I told myself it was just curiosity, just freedom. But in the silence after, I felt like a ghost haunting my own home. The walls that once held laughter now echoed with betrayal, each creak a reminder of promises undone. The first time I confronted him, my voice cracked before my words did. I asked, "Do you love her?" He paused too long. Silence is louder than confession. My chest felt hollow, as if ribs had turned to ash. Michael said, "It's not what you think," but his eyes betrayed him before his lips could. I wanted to scream, but the only sound that came out was a whisper, a prayer to be enough, even when I knew I wasn't. The mornings became heavier, like gravity itself was against me. Michael kissed my forehead and said, "I'll be late tonight," with the same rhythm he used for every lie. I smiled, pretending to believe him, but silence clawed at me once the door closed. Coffee turned bitter in my mouth, each sip tasting like betrayal. I began memorizing the sound of his footsteps, trying to measure truth by the way he tied his shoes. My heart beat faster when he lingered at the mirror, adjusting his collar as if he were dressing for someone else. I told myself not to spiral, not to drown in paranoia, but trust had already cracked, and once it cracked, every sound felt like a confession. Emily's name became a shadow in our home. Michael said, "She understands me," and the words split me open like a knife. I nodded, my lips moving before my heart could scream. I told myself I could live with sharing, but not with secrets. Every time he mentioned her, my chest hollowed. The rules we built began to feel like traps I had set for myself. I promised freedom, but what I wanted was devotion, and I hated myself for it. I hated how I could smile at her face while my soul bled in silence. I hated how I envied her laughter, her fire, her place in the stories Michael told that no longer belonged to me. Rules became the fragile walls I clung to. No sleepovers, no secrets, no favorites, that's what we agreed. But rules are meaningless when love shifts its shape. Michael brushed them aside like cobwebs, saying, "It's harmless." I told myself to believe him, But my bones knew better. I watched the way he looked at her, the way his laughter softened only for her. My body felt transparent, like I was fading while they grew solid. And still I told myself I could endure that polyamory was not meant to be chains but choice. But choices began to weigh like shackles when I was the only one bound by them. The nights were the worst. The bed felt colder with him in it, his body present but his heart somewhere else. I reached for his hand, and he let me hold it, but it was limp, lifeless. Michael whispered, "You're my anchor," but his words felt borrowed, like they belonged to another night, another woman. I stared at the ceiling, my chest tight with questions I couldn't ask. If I spoke, the truth might burn me alive. So I swallowed it night after night, until silence carved me hollow. My love turned into performance, my body into costume, my smile into mask. And still, I stayed. One night, I caught the slip. Michael said, "She told me," then froze. My heart stopped before his words did. He stammered, I read it somewhere. Lies are clumsy, but betrayal is sharp." I saw it in his eyes, the spark he couldn't hide. He looked at me the way he looked at her, and in that moment, I knew I wasn't the only one. My chest cracked with silence, and my lips formed a smile sharper than glass. I said, "Go on, finish what you were saying." But he never did. Truth lived between us, heavy as storm clouds waiting to break. The lies no longer whispered, they screamed in silence. Michael said, "Just a work thing," but I smelled the perfume on his shirt, soft and floral, not mine. My laugh came out sharp like glass breaking, pretending not to notice, pretending not to die inside. The rules we made together, the promises we thought would shield us, had turned into chains binding only me. He wore freedom like a second skin, slipping out of agreements as if they were threads. I wanted to believe him, but betrayal has a taste, bitter and undeniable. Emily's laughter haunted me like an echo, filling the walls where our love once lived. I tried to anchor myself in memories of when his eyes only saw me, but those eyes had already drifted. My heart learned to ache in rhythm with his excuses, each beat heavier, each excuse sharper, until I no longer knew which wound cut deepest, his lie, her presence, or my silence. His secrets arrived like text messages in the night, soft vibrations that shattered me awake. I asked once, "Who is it?" And he smiled, too quickly, too easily, saying, "Just a friend." My bones knew better. His voice softened when he spoke to her, as if the air itself belonged to Emily. Jealousy became my shadow, a companion I never wanted but couldn't shake. And with jealousy came guilt, because hadn't I agreed to this? Hadn't I promised to share him, to bend instead of break? Yet, sharing felt like being erased. I pressed my ear against the silence of our apartment, listening for the cracks in his lies. Emily's name became a siren song, pulling me under waves where I couldn't breathe. In the mirror, I no longer saw Anna. I saw a ghost, pale and trembling, desperate for truths I feared would destroy me more than the lies. The betrayal wasn't a kiss, not yet. It was a look. Michael's eyes lingered on Emily's face too long, holding her in a way I thought only I deserved. Emily laughed, careless and bright, and she said, "It's harmless," as if love could be measured in degrees of damage. I nodded, smiling with lips that tasted like blood, my calm nothing more than armor cracking under weight. That single gaze carved me deeper than any touch. Love was no longer ours. It had shifted, grown roots in soil I could never touch. I felt myself fading, no longer the star of my own story, but an understudy watching her role slip away. And in that quiet devastation, I realized betrayal doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers in the way someone looks at another, with a softness they've forgotten to save for you. At night, my mind became a projector, replaying every glance, every smile, every slip of his tongue. I lay in the dark whispering, maybe I imagined it, though my chest screamed otherwise. Michael told me, "You're my everything," but the words sounded borrowed, his eyes reciting lines written for someone else. My pillow carried the weight of unshed tears, my body rigid against the cold emptiness he left, even while lying inches away. I felt like a guest in my own story, clutching scraps of a script rewritten without me. Every memory became sharp, cutting me open as I replayed them again and again, searching for signs I had missed. Betrayal wasn't sudden. It was deliberate, a slow drip of poison soaking into my veins, until even my heartbeat hurt. I didn't need proof anymore. The silence itself was proof enough. The breaking point wasn't loud. It was subtle, almost ordinary. Michael's phone buzzed across the table, and before even reading it, he smiled. My heart shattered at that smile, because it wasn't mine. He shoved the phone away when he noticed my stare, muttering, "It's nothing." But devotion doesn't hide. It leaks out in small, dangerous ways. His eyes lingered on the glow like it held his salvation. My hands trembled around my glass, the wine shaking with me. I whispered, "When did I stop being enough?" My voice barely a sound, but it cracked the air between us like thunder. He didn't answer, not with words. He didn't need to. His silence was louder than a confession, and in it I heard the truth I had been avoiding. I was no longer the chosen one. I was just the one left behind. The night I discovered the truth wasn't stormy or cinematic. It was painfully ordinary, which made it crueler. Michael left his phone face down on the counter, careless, as if secrets could hide under glass. When it buzzed, I didn't mean to look, but Emily's name lit the screen like a flame in darkness. My breath caught, the air burning in my throat. I whispered, "Why hide if there's nothing to hide?" He froze, his face blanching before he stretched a smile across it, a weak disguise. He said, "It's work," but his voice cracked, brittle, betraying him before his words could. My hand moved before I thought, fingers trembling as I lifted the phone. I saw her words, intimate and dripping with affection, sentences he once sent to me. My heart cracked with each line, every promise undone by glowing text. Betrayal wasn't suspicion anymore, it was undeniable, written in pixels I could never unsee. His hand shot out, desperate to reclaim the phone, but I pulled it closer to my chest like a weapon. He said, "It's not what you think, the oldest lie in the world," and his voice was hollow. My eyes burned as I asked, "Then why do you say to her what you once said to me?" My words shook, but they cut deeper than any scream could. Michael froze, caught between guilt and denial, but silence betrayed him more than words ever could. Dinner sat untouched on the table, food turning cold like the love between us. Every promise, every boundary, every fragile rule we built dissolved in seconds. Emily wasn't just a passing presence. She was the one he chose when he thought I wasn't watching. Betrayal didn't come like thunder. It sat in front of me, breathing, smirking, daring me to deny its existence. Emily wasn't in the room, but her presence was everywhere. Michael said, "She needs me," his words slicing through me sharper than a blade. He didn't stumble, didn't even try to deny it. He admitted her pull, her claim, her place in his life. My throat burned as I whispered, "And what about me?" My voice carried more desperation than accusation, but it vanished in the air before it reached him. He turned away, unable to meet my eyes, and that told me everything I needed to know. He was already halfway gone, tethered to her in ways I could never reclaim. The betrayal wasn't a kiss or a touch. It was in the absence, in the way he had already given pieces of himself away long before I caught him. And the worst part was realizing he never planned to stop. The house shrank around me that night, walls pressing in with the weight of truth. I asked, "Did you love her before you stopped loving me?" My words trembled, but they cut through the air like thunder. His silence stretched long, unbearable, confirming what his lips wouldn't. He lowered his head, shame dragging his shoulders down, and I hated him for not even trying to lie. I wanted him to deny it, to fight for me, to pretend just long enough that I could believe again. But he didn't. He surrendered with silence, handing me the truth I dreaded most. My skin went cold, my body rigid, breath shallow. Polyamory was supposed to be freedom, but he twisted it into abandonment, exile dressed as choice. My ribs felt hollow, as if they had collapsed inward, leaving nothing but a shell to house my grief. Clarity came not with shouting, but with a whisper. He said, "I never meant to hurt you, but intent didn't matter anymore." My voice broke into a whisper, each word sharper than glass. "You didn't just hurt me, you erased me." His eyes glossed with tears he couldn't shed. His lips parted, but no words came. Silence fell between us, heavy, final, more brutal than any scream. I realized betrayal wasn't only about Emily. It was about promises he made to himself, to me, to the fragile love we once nurtured, and how he abandoned them all. Love wasn't supposed to feel like exile, but I was stranded, left alone in a landscape of broken vows. My tears blurred him into a ghost, and all I could see was the truth. What he once gave to me, he now gave away freely, and I could never reclaim it. The words I swallowed for weeks erupted that night. I slammed my hand on the table, the sound sharp as glass shattering. "Do you love her?" I demanded, my voice shaking but louder than ever before. Michael's face drained, lips parting as if to deny, but no sound came. My chest burned, tears already streaking before I realized I was crying. He whispered, "It's complicated." And I laughed. Bitter and broken, because love isn't complicated. Lies are. The air between us was thick, suffocating, full of every silence, every stolen glance, every lie we tried to bury. The walls trembled with the force of words unsaid, until I realized nothing I said would fix what he already gave away. I screamed, words spilling like knives I couldn't control. "You promised me stability, and all you gave me was chaos." My voice cracked, but I kept going. Michael stood, shouting back, "You knew what this was." His voice was sharp, defensive, desperate. Our love collapsed into fire, two people burning each other alive with every word. The house echoed with fury, pictures on the wall shaking as if the walls themselves couldn't hold us anymore. Tears blurred my vision, but anger gave me strength. My body shook, but I refused to be silent anymore. Every promise he broke poured out of me like venom, each one louder, sharper, deadlier than the last. The fight twisted into despair. I collapsed onto the sofa, sobbing into my hands, voice breaking as I whispered, "Why wasn't I enough?" Michael froze, his anger dissolving into silence, but silence was worse than rage. He didn't answer, and that was the answer itself. His eyes glistened, his chest heaving, but no words came. The room quieted, except for my ragged breaths, the sound of a woman broken in half. My love begged to be chosen, but begging was already beneath me. My tears turned to salt in my mouth, and I realized I wasn't crying for him. I was crying for the version of me that believed in us, the one he killed with every secret he kept. Michael finally spoke, his voice low, trembling. "I love you, but I love her too." The words ripped through me, jagged and final. My head snapped up, eyes wide, chest hollow. I said, "You can't love us both. Not like this." My voice cracked into shards. He reached toward me, but I pulled back, recoiling as if his touch burned. My heart screamed for him to choose, but deep down I knew he already had. My tears dried into something sharper than grief, clarity. The kind that scars. Ow. His confession didn't just break me, it destroyed the last illusion I clung to. Love wasn't shared anymore, it was stolen. The climax wasn't just words, it was silence, collapse, surrender. My body shook as I whispered, "Then go to her." His eyes widened, desperate, but I held firm, my chest heaving as if each breath was war. He stammered, "I don't want to lose you," but the truth was he already had. Tears streamed, but my voice was steady, final. "You can't keep us both." The words cut through the air, sharp as thunder. For the first time he had no answer, no lie, no excuse. Only silence. And in that silence, I realized my love had already ended, not tonight, but the moment he chose her in secret. The climax wasn't his betrayal. It was my realization that I could survive it. The silence after the fight was heavier than the screaming. I sat alone at the table, staring at the empty chair where he had been. the echo of his voice still rattling in my bones. My tears had dried into salt lines across my face, but the ache inside was endless. I whispered to no one, "It's over," though the words felt too small for the death of something that once held my whole world. The air smelled of wine and burnt candles, reminders of what used to be love. My chest rose and fell in shallow breaths, the kind you take when survival feels like a burden. Resolution didn't feel like healing. It felt like ruins. The next morning, his jacket still hung on the chair, mocking me with its presence. I traced the fabric with my fingers, remembering the nights it wrapped around me like safety. Now, it smelled of her perfume. I pressed my face into it, inhaling what was no longer mine, and I broke again. I whispered, "You gave me away," my voice trembling like shattered glass. The apartment was too quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't soothe but suffocates. Even the walls felt emptier, stripped of laughter, stripped of us. What remained was a hollow stage where love had once performed. Days blurred into nights, the clock ticking louder than my own heartbeat. I wandered the apartment like a ghost, touching things that no longer felt like mine. The framed photos mocked me with their frozen smiles. In one, Michael had his arm around me, eyes bright, promises alive. Now those same eyes belonged to her. I whispered, "Where did we lose it?" But no photo answered. Memories don't comfort when they're soaked in betrayal. They cut deeper, sharper, crueler. The past became a knife I couldn't stop pressing against my own chest. I sat on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket, watching the city move without me. People laughed below, cars honked, life continued as mine collapsed. I whispered into the wind, "Maybe I'll survive," though I didn't believe it. My chest felt hollow, my ribs caging only silence. The sky turned orange with sunset, and for the first time, I realized love didn't die in one moment. It decays slowly, piece by piece, until all that remains are ashes. And I was covered in them, choking, still searching for air. The final resolution wasn't peace, it was acceptance of loss. I stood before the mirror, staring at someone I barely recognized. My eyes were swollen, my face marked by grief, but beneath the ruin, I saw something else: survival. My voice cracked as I whispered, "You broke me, but I'm still here." The truth lingered in the glass. I would never be the same, but I was not erased. Resolution wasn't healing or forgiveness. It was living with scars that would never fade. The ashes of love settled, and I was left standing in the smoke, breathing, even when it burned. I thought endings came with grand gestures, with slamming doors or shattered plates. But the real ending came in whispers, in the hollow echo of "I love you," said too late. Michael left that night without looking back, his shadow slipping through the doorway like smoke. I stood frozen, heart splintered, unable to stop him, unable to beg. My body wanted to collapse, but my soul stayed upright, trembling under the weight of goodbye. I whispered into the emptiness, "Go then, find what I could never be," and the sound of my own voice frightened me. For the first time, I realized he was gone, not just from my home, but from my story. The apartment felt cavernous without him, every corner echoing with absence. I drifted through the rooms, touching things he left behind: a book, a tie, a half-empty cologne bottle. Each item whispered his presence, yet screamed his betrayal. I whispered, "You were everywhere, and now you are nowhere." My body ached with loneliness, but somewhere beneath it, strength flickered. I realized absence could hurt, but it could also set me free. The silence pressed against me, not as a cage but as proof I had survived. I walked through the city, blending into strangers, my grief hidden behind steady steps. The world didn't pause for my heartbreak. People laughed, couples held hands, life moved forward while I carried ruins. I whispered, "How can everything look the same when nothing is the same?" My chest tightened, but my legs kept moving, each step pulling me farther from the life I lost. I realized survival wasn't about forgetting. It was about walking through the world with scars visible only to me. Betrayal marked me, but it didn't stop me. Nights became the hardest. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling his ghost beside me. The sheets were cold, but my skin burned with memories I couldn't erase. I whispered, "You took everything, and yet I'm still here." The words surprised me, like an accidental truth slipping free. Tears flowed again, but they weren't the same as before. They weren't for him. They were for me, for the woman who loved too deeply and broke because of it. Grief softened into something sharper. Survival. I wasn't healed, but I was alive. The final confession is this: love doesn't always end with goodbye. Sometimes it ends in silence, in ashes, in the haunting realization that you were never enough for someone who wanted everything. I whispered into the darkness. He promised me stability, but every secret date shook my world apart. My voice cracked, echoing like thunder through the empty room. That was the truth, my truth, and it would linger long after my words faded. He left, but the echo of betrayal stayed. And so did I. Scarred, bleeding, but unbroken, whispering the final line of our story into the night, knowing it would echo forever.